Welcome to another episode of the Bill Chun Show. Today, I have an amazing two guests. My twin boys. They are in the audience with me, my very first live audience. So, hello, boys. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much for making me laugh. And I have a very special guest today in that later on I will be bringing on my little brother, Jen. But before that, I wanted to talk a bit about what had happened to me recently. So my last name is Chun, Chun. It turns out, despite having just 4 letters, it's a rather complicated name for some people to spell. I've gotten everything from it's the vowel. Instead of U, sometimes it's I, A, E, and often the letter G is added to the name of Chun. So Bill Chun, well, it's Chun, Chun, but it's rather difficult for many ignorant people, which for many years, it hasn't really bothered me, but that got me to think about, let's go back to the very first year I came to the United States and kind of remember all the events which I had to deal with. And the reason why I think this is important to talk about is because it's for younger generation. For me, I have lived. I have lived a good life. And a lot of these ignorant people, they don't bother me. But what about my twin boys? What about my other kids, younger people? How will they deal with ignorance? So I came to the United States with my parents and my brothers in 1974, spring of 74. And we moved to a small town outside of Cincinnati called Loveland, Ohio. For the first 8 months, we didn't have a car. So the nearest grocery store was about half a mile away. And we probably couldn't, but what we did was to take a shopping cart from a grocery store. And there was a big hill we had to go up. And all of us, 5 of us, would go grocery shopping and fill the grocery cart, and we would push the cart home. And more than a few times, we had cans of soda thrown at us. And I know it probably was profanity plus Chinese, but I think all I remember is hearing Chinese. So that was when I first came to the United States at the age of 12. People saying, hey, this Chinese, that Chinese. No big deal because I didn't speak the language. And then we moved to Dayton, Ohio, where I went to junior high and high school. And I remember in the 70s, often, hey, you look like Bruce Lee. You know Kung Fu? And I would say, well, I wanted to say, first of all, I look nothing like Bruce Lee. And Kung Fu is Chinese stuff, and I actually am Korean. But it didn't really matter because I don't know. I was just busy living, trying to be an adolescent in this country. So often when, hey, Bruce Lee, you know Kung Fu? I'd say, hey, I wanted to say, yeah, I know Kung Fu. I'll kick your ass. But those encounters never really happened. So I got through. The next time I had to deal with racism was actually the first year at United States Naval Academy. Out of 1,600 plebes, there were a small number of Asians, and I think 2 Koreans. And by then, I had lived in this country for 6 years. I was just busy wanting to be a typical American kid, listening to hard rock music, just being a kid. And then what do? I sign up for military service. So, United States Naval Academy, like all service academy, the purpose is one, to train us to be soldiers representing United States and defending United States. The job of military school really was to turn us into officers, to lead enlisted people. So the thing is, on daily basis, we had this thing called chow call, typically done at 10 minutes and 5 minutes before formation. And we had many formations. And I would have to say, sir, you now have 10 minutes until noon meal formation. Sir, And then I would rattle off the menu as well as officers of the day and events after school or after the classes were over. And in my company, 23rd company, there were 30 some of us. And because chow call had to be done at every corner, that meant at least a couple of times a week, I had to do these chow calls. And you had to do these chow calls really fast because you had to get to the formation before upperclassmen. And here, whenever I tried, I would often get stopped before I would leave for my formation and be called, "Hey, Chinaman, can you please speak in English this time? Because I can't understand gosh darn Chinese or whatever you're speaking." This went on for 12 months. And boy, I mean, talk about having palpitation and angina. It wasn't easy for a boy, literally a boy out of high school, to be in military to deal with this. But I understood for upperclassmen, they were trying to make sure that I had the will, the courage, and all that to represent the United States. Well, I did. I survived it. But even though I was called Chinaman for 12 months, I don't know. I didn't really see that as a racial thing until much later. And because we were only allowed 3 responses, regardless of questions, I could say, "Yes, sir," sir," "no excuse, sir." I couldn't say anything else. So I became a Chinaman. Fast forward, while going through medical school, really wasn't an issue. And then I came to Boston for training. Again, I trained at Boston City Hospital, where the hospital was full of immigrants from islands, from overseas like Southeast Asia. So bunch of immigrants, no big deal. It was when I had to spell my name or sign my name on a daily basis. Many times throughout the day, it became clear that many of you had a hard time spelling the name Chun or pronouncing the name Chun. I remember one of the very first patients I had when I started private practice. A patient came in. She sat down and she said, "Doctor, do you speak English?" And I said, "Yes, I do." So I became her doctor. And again, it really wasn't an issue until it became an issue. So for the past 30 years, living in Greater Boston, working in Greater Boston, I deal with it. Because you know what? My patients who come to me from all over, they don't care what I look like. They don't care that I'm from Korea. And for all they know, I may be from China. But they don't care. They're coming to a doctor whose name happens to be Chun, who happens to be good at his job, who's polite, and deal with their problem. And as an immigrant American, I would tell you, no matter what you do for a living, find that passion and be really good at it. And more often than not, you will have to correct people, the pronunciation, the spelling of your name, even if it's only 4 letters. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because of what happened last week. Hey, Mike, show that fax copy. There you go. It says Dr. China. This cover page is from a doctor's office where we share a mutual patient. I had requested her information. This came to me. This medical practice is owned by one of the largest nonprofit healthcare entities in the country, which is also Harvard affiliated. And here is an official document, and it's addressed to Dr. China. There is no mistake about China. This person did not try to hide that 5th letter. I feel like there was perhaps a malintent, because I don't know if that person, who probably was a medical assistant, working for doctor, didn't think that this official cover letter was going to escape me. I mean, on one hand, I laughed. But on the other hand, what does this say if this kind of stupidity is allowed to go on in healthcare? This is where even a passive immigrant like myself, Asian American, that right? Often we are saying, hey, you know what? Asians, they're passive. They don't really speak up. You know, you can beat them up because they'll just take it. Well, I'm going to speak up, damn it. This is not right. CHUN is very different than CHINA. First of all, if you said Dr. Korea, maybe I would have forgiven you because I'm Korean. But Dr. China, it's wrong. Whoever you are, I feel like if you're my employee, for this reason alone, I would terminate you. Because you must be at least 21 years old, right? And you decided to be stupid and ignorant and offend people. And when something like this happens, we, immigrant Americans, not just Asian Americans, we should not take it. We should speak up and correct people like this particular person. I don't blame the entity who employs this person because, I mean, how much of cultural sensitivity training can you do? Because when people decide to be stupid, they will act out. But especially in 2020, with all the tension we have right now, with everything going on, aside from pandemic crisis, we have so much tension because of race. This happens. I realize I'm going to make sure I tell my kids. In most cases, you can ignore stupid people and just let it go. But there will come a time where you will have to take action. My action for this particular episode is to talk about it and let others know we, the people, we immigrant American, there's a limit as to how much of stupidity and ignorance we're willing to take. And we will not remain passive. We will speak up. I'm going to bring on my little brother now. His name is Chun. And let's see if I can get him on the Skype and just talk. There he goes.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, my little brother, Chun. What happened to your hair? Is it on a ponytail?
Yeah, it's
So this is my little brother, and I wanted to bring him on to this program just to kind of talk. Interestingly, we live about an hour and a half apart, but it's really hard for us to get together because of what we do. And I figure if we have a conversation through this format, it may be one of the longest conversations we've had in a while. So I just wanted to show off my little brother because my little brother happens to be a very special person. So I wanted I wanted to bring him back to 70s and talk about some of the stuff that he may not even remember. But my brother is by profession software engineer and has been married to a great woman for a lot longer than I have with any one of mine, and 3 amazing kids. So, hey, Jen, do you remember
Yeah.
1974 when you first came to the United States? Any memories?
I do. I do. First of all, I just want to tell Alex that I'm growing my hair out because I need to beat him in something, so.
Alex is right here
Yeah,
in the audience.
actually, it, it's interesting because I remember, as you know, when we lived in Seoul, my childhood, I have just really, really good memories, especially of our grandmother, our harmony. Um, I think I was spoiled to quite an extent as well. I remember all of us lining up to say goodbye to her and everybody crying and not me understanding at that point. And I
Right.
think our dad tried to distract me on the plane because I just loved the smell of his Zippo lighter, which um,
I don't
and
remember
and
that.
and it's interesting because as you know, I was in Palisades yesterday to meet two of our aunts and our uncle Jim Morin, and you know, it does bring back a lot of memories for sure. Coming into Chillicothe and then landing back in Loveland. So yeah, I remember the '70s. I also remember being in your car, with you listening to an 8-track of Foghat, I believe,
Wow.
in your Camaro.
That's right. My beloved Camaro.
Yeah, on your way to high school out of Kettering Square
Right.
Apartments, which was the government housing that we lived in.
So going back to Korea, he had mentioned harmony. Harmony, our grandmother, our maternal grandmother, I think regardless of what country you're from, we all have harmony.
Sure.
And she's just a very special woman.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the time my little brother was born. He was born in winter, late fall, and unlike me, my mother actually went to a clinic to have him. And I remember that day very well because my harmony took my mother because she went into labor, and I had to stay up all night underneath the blanket because I was scared to come out of the blanket, come outside of the blanket. And that was the beginning of my little brother. He was 4 when we left Korea, and our grandmother really did spoil him. Our mother would give our grandmother a few dollars a month for spending, and she would save up. And at
Yeah.
least once or twice a month, she would buy small amount of beef, marinated, and cook and feed my little brother. And my father, I think he must have, because he was getting older, decided that he would change up a little bit. He bought. Do you remember that red car you had? Red pedal car?
I had a pedal car, and then I also remember, being the spoiled person that I was at the time. I remember being able to go with the friends that we had around there and basically get anything I wanted from this little store.
That's right.
I have specific memories of these squirt guns,
Uh huh.
uh, the rubber squirt guns that you submerge underneath water, and
Right.
you squeeze them and you let them go, and memories of our grandmother, doing laundry, at the well and stuff. So, my memories of childhood in Korea were very fond, very
Yeah.
loving. She had me with her all the time,
Yeah.
super caring. Yeah.
So we lived in one room. We all slept together, and that's how we grew up. We come to United States, 74, and I think it was really hard for, I mean, my little brother because in the beginning, my parents had to work, and often two of us were left alone. And then our parents got divorced, so transition was hard. We moved to another city,
Yep. Yep.
and I think because of the age difference between my brother and I, which is about 8, I wasn't really around. I was working, playing sports and whatnot, but it's just that gap prevented us from really getting close. But to this day, I still have this letter Jin wrote to me to Naval Academy. It still is in my Pleve handbook.
Gosh.
I
Yeah.
still have it. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful handwritten note. It was very thoughtful.
Wow.
And then he made me this wooden sculpture of giraffe at age of
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
And you should know that that has been next to my bed for the past 40 years. It's still in good condition. I have it.
Nice.
Fast forward, my little brother, he is very humble, but he's a extremely intelligent young man and very creative. Um, from living in what I think is tough condition in 70s and 80s, again compared to now, there were no social service. We either survive or we didn't. And my brother wrote one page science fiction for early admission to Yale, and he got in. Early admission to Yale. He didn't have any tutoring, he didn't have to pay anyone. He got in all by himself. And I think when I think about it, I'm so proud of my little brother, his achievement. And
Thank you.
I was just telling somebody that a friend of mine that when my brother was voted as one of the 50 most gifted high school graduates coming out of Ohio in class of 87, that weekend, I mean, right now, I cannot imagine not attending such event. But I think my poor brother had to go by himself. Right? Remember that? And I think
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
a video of you playing Roxanne. Was it Roxanne you played on guitar?
Oh my God, is that video around? Don't tell anyone. Don't give any details.
Yeah.
It's probably, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You played
That's,
Roxanne. I didn't even know my brother played electric guitar, but he taught himself play that. And then now he's a successful software engineer. And when I think about where we started and what we had to deal with, I think one thing that two of us are very feel very strongly about are being good father figure.
yeah.
Both of us, I mean, between two of us, we have 8 kids, and all
Yeah.
8 kids are not only beautiful, healthy, intelligent, and high achievers. And what we've done is to set good examples. You agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as we've talked before, it's just a matter of being kind. That's the thing that we've, for me, it's just making sure that our children grow up as kind human beings. And I think it's really hard, um, to put things into context for how you and I grew up. You grew up a little bit differently than how I grew up, and it's a lot different than how our kids grew up as well. They're really fortunate in a lot of circumstances. I mean, you tell me about how proud you are of me. I'm certainly very proud of you. I mean, we're the first generation in our family to graduate from college, and I've told the same story that you've told before as well, which is, driving 12 hours nonstop from New Haven to Springboro, Ohio, back on a school vacation. You come in, you give our mom, you give mom a hug, and she puts a bus pan in your hand. You know what I
Right,
mean? I
right,
think it's 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 thinking about it. There's certainly a lot of things that I could say were wrong. Would I want anyone to necessarily go through some of those circumstances? Of course not. But I think that for the adults that were in our lives, especially our mother, they did the best that they could, and they did a lot. You know, um, it's given the time and the age, I just don't know. And being a parent myself, I don't know that level of courage, and by courage, what I mean is being scared shitless. How do you feed your kids? How do you keep a roof over their heads? What do you have to do just to get ahead? And then still grinding it because you have no other choice. And then the face that you show to your own children isn't necessarily one of fear, because you don't want them to suffer through that anxiety. But it's also making sure, I mean, as you know, the I remember the only non A I had in high school was I had a B plus freshman year, and the look that my mom gave our mom gave us, she didn't say a word,
right.
and that's all I needed to see, because I knew that for us, our way out of that situation was through education. That was the only way. And thank God that we're here in this country, because we wouldn't have been able to do it anywhere else, I don't think. Yeah.
And I think that's what we're talking about. It's us and my patients, many immigrants. They all appreciate what we have in this country. And if you
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
you apply yourself and find that passion, then compared to what we had back home, it is an
Yeah.
amazing country. And the purpose
Yeah.
of this program is to share stories like that because it needs to be heard. And some of us and many of us do well, but there are others struggle.
Yeah.
And I know in retrospect, I feel like because what our dad did for living in Korea, and he was in a place where he was revered and respected by his younger underlings. I think it was
Yeah.
really hard for our father,
Yeah.
but but thank God for Uncle Jim and our aunt
Yeah.
who started this chain reaction by sponsoring our grandparents and bringing us here. Um,
Yeah.
and going back to the story, Uncle Jim in Chillicothe, um, I think you were with us, but I remember visiting him at his work in a grocery store. Um, tall, lanky, and very gentle. And that was
Mm.
what 46 years ago,
Mhm.
and I didn't even know he was still around. And I want to pay respect to him because it was his effort, his wife's effort
Yeah.
that we are here, and we were given this once in a lifetime opportunity, and we grabbed it. And it may have been some struggles here and there, but we did okay. And I
Yeah. I
always
think.
say,
Yeah.
it,
Absolutely.
it's not it's for us and it's for next generation, and hopefully
Yeah.
they'll do a lot better than how well we've done.
Yeah. I saw Uncle Jim and Aunt Kay yesterday,
Yeah,
and they're and I saw Como as well, um, and our cousin Oni. So they're so nice, and he's
really.
still tall, lanky, handsome guy.
Yeah.
Aunt Kay, beautiful. Or
Wow.
Como is beautiful, and they're just genuinely some of the nicest people. And you're right, it's interesting to think about for me. How many people they positively affected just by putting out the effort to allow our family to come in here. I can't. It's hard to think about what you and I would be doing had we not come to this country. It would certainly have been different, for sure. But I think for your children and for our children, it's they have opportunities that we don't have. There are also, as you say, a lot of people here that are recent immigrants that are also putting in the same kind of grind.
Yeah.
Saturday night, we went to visit our daughter, Friday night daughter, in Greenwich Village because she goes to NYU. And I parked the car. I talked to this guy, Michelle, who's from Haiti. He's been here for 4 years. He's grinding it out as well.
Yeah.
Him and his wife. They have two kids. I think they were 10 and 12. And it's the same story. It just continues to happen. And I think that's the principles, regardless of and by the way, if we talk politics, I'm going to hang up. But regardless of where you lie on the political spectrum, if you think about the ideals and the opportunities that we currently have in this country, you can find smatterings of that in other countries, certain, mostly in the West, but not the way it is here. I mean, there are very little things that can stop you if you have the right attitude, if you're a kind person, if you put the work ethic in. And I think the most beautiful thing, I think, is for parents such as ourselves and all the parents that are out there right now that are just putting in that silent effort for their children just to give that next generation an opportunity. Who would have known um, that, you know, and that who you and I were from where we came from, you would be a doctor, I would have, be doing what I'm doing. And it's certainly, to me, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, are there issues and things that can be improved on? Certainly, but I think, I certainly am incredibly grateful. And the older I get, by the way, Alex and Zach, it's my birthday tomorrow. Remind your dad. The older I get, the more I appreciate, because I don't think I would have had like what our mom went through. I wouldn't have been able to do that. I've told you this one story before. When I was 16, I was on my way to work at some buffet or whatever in Miami's work, and our mother was working at China Hut, off of 725. And I stopped to get gas, and she was in the back of the restaurant with her hands in her head, crying. There was a cook yelling at her with a wok in his hand. I grabbed nunchucks in the back of my car. Why did I have nunchucks? I don't know. But I grabbed them. I went over there and I was ready to kill him.
Yeah.
And she looked at me and said, Gina, go back. I need the job. Don't worry about it. Just go home. And from that time on, it's just, especially, I think for a female, of someone of, slight stature as our mother, it speaks a lot to resilience and just grit. That's a level of grit that I hope to have. Um, it's quite remarkable, I think.
I would say that when it comes to politics, all I would say is we just have to vote.
Yeah,
And I will bring you back for another episode to talk about politics, why we're different after the
yeah,
election's over. And you're absolutely right about making the decision for parents in their 30s to come to another country with no education, no money, no support system in place with three kids. Um,
yeah,
had we stayed in Korea, I always think I would have just followed our dad's footstep.
yeah,
I would have just worked for him. I would have
yeah,
probably had one or two boys or something. I'd be smoking and drinking and
yeah.
womanizing just like he did. So that's what we would have done. And you too. We would have hung out in the same place.
We would have all been hanging out at the auto park.
Right. Chun. Yeah. The
The I don't know.
I I have this luxury of having patients from 60 plus countries in
Mm,
my practice. Every one of them, we essentially are talking about the same thing. How grateful we are, and we
yeah,
just work. And
yeah,
it's times like this with all the craziness, pandemic crisis, election, and demonstration. For us immigrants, first generation,
yeah,
we're just grateful. And
yeah.
I am so proud of you. One thing
No,
I know
thanks.
we have to
Likewise.
do is we have to try to spend more time in person. We
Yeah, of
talk about this
course.
all the time. My
Yeah.
birthday gift to you will be a weekend between us, just two of us. We should
Okay.
just spend a night in hotel in Boston.
Yeah.
Eat, drink, and
Mm,
spend a night talking, smoke a cigar.
right. You're paying, so I think
Of
Four
course.
Seasons,
There we go.
presidential.
There you go. There you go.
So.
Any
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, um, I had mentioned this fax I got to my office this week, and they listed
I
my
saw
name as
that.
Dr. China. It's not the first time; it happens all the time, and I'm sure in your world it happens too. And all
It's
we can
happened.
do,
I can't. Yeah.
yeah, all
As
we
I
can
told
do,
you,
yeah,
I'm not gonna talk about the industry that I'm in or the companies that I've worked for. I will tell you, there was a time, it's interesting because I grew up learning English watching cartoons like Popeye.
uh huh,
I remember when we first came here, our parents put me in kindergarten in Loveland, up at the very top of that
right,
hill, before I was kindergarten age. And I still know how to do CC My Playmate because two really nice girls taught me CC My Playmate. Um, so, uh, I don't, I'm not I don't feel particularly braggadocious about my education or where I went to school, only because I remember, as you know, my freshman year at Yale, I called you in a panic because there was a dinner and I didn't know how to properly use a fork and knife. And I remember the book that you had. I called you because I remember the book that you had, which was the book that they give to all midshipmen about,
hmm
where the forks and knives and glasses are on a table. And so, I've been in meetings before with, executives from, uh, uh, from England who were very high up, who had never met me before. They saw my name, and the first thing they said was to congratulate me because I spoke English very well and I didn't have an accent. And I just sucked it up. You know, What did I want to say? Well, I wanted to say something a lot less kind. But, I also understand the reaction that you have. I mean, I don't know if you ever knew this. One of the times over the summer when I was hanging out in downtown on Brown Street, I was on a date with a girl. We are walking past this biker bar or whatever, and they started doing the typical ching chong or whatever.
Yeah.
I just blew it off. You know what I mean? The next thing I remember, I'm in the passenger seat of my date's car. Her windshield's wiped out. The guy had sucker punched me. My head went back, hit the fender, and knocked me out. I
Mm.
didn't know what day of the week it was. I didn't know who was. I didn't even know where I lived. So 4 stitches in my lip, and it was all over. At the same time, I wonder if you could have a conversation with the person who wrote Dr. China and just talk to them and see and just ask them why and maybe educate them and get to know them on a human level so that then maybe they can change. Maybe they don't understand that even if it was some passive aggressive slight for whatever reason. I think I guess what I'm trying to say is I think when we sometimes, not all the time, because as you know, I've had some incidences and growing up in Ohio as well. But I think sometimes when we face incidents like that, it's worth a try to get someone to kind of understand how much that might hurt someone. As you know, I live in a smallish town in the South Shore, and even my kids have, faced stuff before. But I think it's more out of ignorance and less malicious. And the more that you educate people and try to connect with them on a human level, maybe they'll understand and not do that the next time. Possible. You know,
Sounds like you should go into politics.
you know. I think we need. I think we need. I don't want to talk politics. I'll just leave it at we have. It's disappointing all around. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I definitely think I'm going to bring you back down the road and we'll grab a topic and talk about it. Really
sure.
appreciate your time. You look great.
Thank you.
Um, and best wish for your upcoming birthday tomorrow.
Thank
Um,
you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Awesome.
yeah,
You remembered.
I remembered. So,
Yeah.
Jen, I love you so much, brother.
Love you too.
Looking
Yeah.
forward to seeing you soon in person. Have a great
Yeah.
night.
Yeah. Tell Zach and Alex I said hello.
I will.
Hello, boys. Alex, don't cut your hair because we're in a
There's a
competition now.
contest. All right. Have a good night.
All right. You too. Bye.
My little brother, ever so humble, one of the smartest persons I know, and I know a fair number of smart people. Um, he's an amazing father, dedicated husband. He has come a long way, and I think we all realize what kind of role, particularly our mothers, have played in many of our journey. And all of his stories are just bringing back lots of memories. So, but we may differ in our political views, but we both certainly appreciate this country. Thank you very much for joining us. And until next time, this is Bill Chun.